Well, good morning, Quilt Alliance. My name is Karen Benke, and I'm here at the original Sewing and Quilting Expo in Raleigh, North Carolina. And they asked me to tell you about a quilt. So before I do that, I'm going to tell you that my first quilt 20 years ago was a log cabin. And when I did that quilt, I had a bunch of wavy lines, and I really didn't know what to do with those or how to sew the next piece on. Well, fortunately, the good Lord made these creative grids rulers, and he showed me a lot of ways that I could get my strips cut with a rotary cutter, which I didn't have 41 years ago. And then I can also take those and turn them into this quilt, which is called a curvy log cabin. So it's a little bit different than the traditional log cabin, and it's an optical illusion. It's still sewn with straight pieces, but it's the way you put the pieces together and the sizes you cut them. So when I started this quilt that's behind me, I cut all my strips with the stripology ruler because I got precision accurate cutting with it. There's slits in it, and there's a non-skid surface on the back so that it doesn't move around and the fabric underneath it can't move around. So I cut all the strips with this. As I started piecing this, you can see this side of the block is wide and this side has narrow strips, okay? So how would you sew those narrow strips without this trim tool? And we have what's called the curvy log cabin trim tool. When you put your log cabin together, did you know that the center block is called the hearth? And you know why? Because the center of a log cabin home is the fireplace, and that's the hearth. So in the traditional block, that's known as the hearth block. So what we do when we put this together is we line up, we sew on the two outside pieces, we line up the hearth with this ruler, and then trim this so it's no longer wavy. We sew on the next round, which is the thick side here, and then we line it up with the hearth and trim that off. And then we just continue on until we have the 8-inch block. And when we put the 8-inch blocks together, this is what we got. This book, Curvy Log Cabins, has 8 different projects using those curvy blocks, and changing the layout and changing the way you position them will give you a different look every time. And so this is why I ascribe to do this. Again, using the trim tools gives me a more accurate edge, and I feel if I've got something straight to sew to from the beginning, I might have a better chance of getting something straight when I'm finished. If you would look at the back of this quilt, you'll see that the blocks on the back are cut just as beautifully as the blocks on the front because we straightened everything. So that's kind of the story behind that. And so any of the tools that are called trim tools, those are what give you this result. And thanks for asking me to tell you all about my quilt.